Thank you very much for taking part in the COP26 side event, the Ocean Decade, Catalyzing Climate Action in Asia and the Pacific. This event will be jointly held by Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO and the Ocean Research Institute, OPRI, of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. My name is Tomoyuki Tsunoda, a Senior Research Fellow from OPRI. I'm in charge of OPRI's project of the Ocean Decade and the international focal point of the Japanese National Committee of the Decade. I'll be serving as your MC today. I would like to thank you for joining us here this morning. In fact, we have planned to be an insightful session on the role of the Ocean Decade in the Asia and Pacific region. First, it is my great pleasure to invite Dr. Hide Sakaguchi, the president of OPRI, to provide the welcome address.
Okay, good morning in Glasgow, good evening in Asia Pacific region. Distinguished speakers and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to welcome you all here to today's event, the Ocean Decade, Catalyzing Climate Action in Asia and the Pacific, as a part of the COP26 Japan Pavilion event. As introduced, my name is Hide Sakaguchi, President of the Ocean Policy Research Institute under the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, one of the co-organizers of this event. Here, I would like to give my special thanks to our co-organizer, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, especially Mr. Vladimir Ryabinin, Executive Secretary of IOC, and to all the speakers of this session to make all your efforts. Thank you very much. As you know, from the beginning of this year, 2021, the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which we call Ocean Decade in short, started, and that we embarked on the 10 years long voyage toward the year 2030. This Ocean Decade was actually proclaimed during the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly in 2017, specifically targeting to realize various SDGs, especially goal of SDGs 14, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. However, when we talk about oceans, we often refer the 70, 80, 90 rule. One version of this interesting rule is that the ocean covers 70% of the planet's surface, 80% of the people live near the ocean, and 90% of international trade is across the ocean. The other version of the 70, 80, 90 rule goes that the ocean covers 70% of the planet's surface, that is same, but 80% of the ocean has never been mapped or explored, and an estimated 90% of all species in the oceans are still undiscovered. This means that we are aware of the importance of the ocean for our life, but we substantially don't know enough about the ocean. Then how are we going to realize SDG 14 without well understanding the ocean? To fulfill this gap between the goal of SDGs and the reality, we need more and more acceleration to accumulate the knowledge about the ocean before 2030. This is the heart of Ocean Decade. It's my understanding. While talking about catalyzing climate action, which is the theme of this event related to Ocean Decade, we must be aware of another gap. This year, 2021, Nobel Prize in Physics awarded for study of humanity's role in Changing Climate. This is the real title of that Nobel Prize. The work of Dr. Shukro Manabe, Dr. Klaus Hasselmann, and Dr. Giorgio Parisi demonstrate that our knowledge about the climate rests on a solid scientific foundation, the Nobel Prize Committee mentioned. Again, knowledge and science are essential indeed. There must be no doubt about that. For example, when we estimate the impact of climate change on the ocean and coastal areas, such as sea ice reduction, extreme weathers, sea level rise, and ocean heat waves, scientific knowledge is indispensable. And the temperature rise of the ocean induces climate change, vice versa. Scientific data has proved this relationship. While the scientific community has been warning about the risks facing the ocean, ocean science is not yet ready to deliver solutions to these challenges through adaptation and mitigation. Here, we can see the gap between natural science and social science for SDGs 14. As both versions of 70, 80, 90 rules I mentioned of the ocean suggest, our knowledge about the ocean must be composed of and combined with both natural science and social science. If you look into the detailed description of ocean decade, you can find the very nice strategy to fill the gap between them and to know that it's well designed to address these issues. Coordination among industry, government, academia, and the private sector related to ocean are all expected to promote the real ocean science by co-design, co-production, and co-delivery work. Following this context, the Ocean Policy Research Institute under the Sasakawa Peace Foundation established a study group on the decade of ocean science in Japan as a base for collaboration with Japan Society with Ocean Policy in August 2020, last year. This study group evolved into the Japan Ocean Decade National Committee in February this year. Through this committee and the study group, we are discussing how we can contribute to the promotion of ocean science in Japan and the Asia-Pacific region. The details will be given by Professor Michida later in this session. Today, this event aims to showcase the diverse ways in which the ocean decade can contribute to climate action at the national and regional level in the Asia-Pacific region, including in Pacific SIDS. We would be more than happy if this event could help promote further collaboration and accelerate and promote cross-cutting efforts for the ocean decade. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sakaguchi. It's my great honor to invite the next. It's my great honor to invite the Honorable Dr. Satyendra Prasad to deliver the keynote speech. He is the ambassador and permanent representative of Fiji to the United Nations. Dr. Here.
Thank you very much. And good morning. Good morning to all of you who have come here on this slightly rainy Glasgow morning, and to your virtual listeners, a very good morning from Glasgow to IOC, UNESCO, USG. Very nice to see you again. Mr. Sakaguchi, OPRI team connecting virtually, as well as those of you who are here. A wonderful good morning. This is a COP26 is a very consequential COP. It is the COP at which we will hold on to 1.5, or we might not hold on to 1.5. It is that consequential. And we know that in holding on to 1.5, the most important role is played by the ocean. We did not understand this so well 10 years ago or 30 years ago. We understand that we understand all aspects of that. Every second breath that we take comes from the ocean. If you had 2 breaths only, the first one is given to us by land-based trees and forests. The second one is given by the oceans. It is by far the best tool that we have in fighting climate action. And that is why the decade of ocean science is so important to our fight to preserve the stability of our planet. And I really congratulate IOC, UNESCO for the foresight and for member states on providing the support, and that we have a dedicated 10-year period in which we will focus minds, focus attention of governments, of research institutions, of collaboration like this with OPRI and IOC, UNESCO, and so many other research institutions, think tanks, of young people across the world, of activists in this space, and that we have a period of 9 years now in which we can bring all of these things together and see what more we need to do to drive our net zero ambition by 2050, if not earlier, and that how national governments and civil society and private sector organizations should mainstream the blue economy and the oceans into everything that they do. It is that fundamental. It is also significant when we are not too many years from Paris, but it is quite significant that about 80 countries today have registered a blue component in their NDCs. This is quite significant, right? Only 3-4 years ago, we had a base of 10 or 12. My own country, Fiji, was one of the first to have put up a blue component of NDC. We now have a stock of about 80, and hereafter, we should be tracking, monitoring progress on the blue component on all NDCs, but tracking for our purposes the NDCs of the blue component of the NDCs. How robust are they? Are they sharing lessons and experiences between each other? Are they pushing as far as they can? So that's also a very significant outcome. And the third, that at COP26, we are really looking forward to galvanizing and crystallizing the climate and oceans nexus and pathway firmly and irreversibly onto the UNFCCC process. For the decade of ocean science, I can only wish you well how important it is. Let me give you one example. As with many other countries, we are also excited by the potential that the seabed offers for deep sea mining. But we know that we do not understand so much about the seabed. We know less about the seabed than we know about the surface of the moon and perhaps of Mars as well. You have given to Fiji the space in which we can think about how science evolves and how we can improve our knowledge and understanding. And as a consequence of the decade of ocean science, and intrinsically linked to the decade of ocean science, Fiji declared a moratorium on seabed mining. And that is how important it is. So you've given us the space to think about where this is headed. But we know that for small countries like ours and across the Pacific, Marshall Islands, Palau, Kiribati, Cook Islands, who are doing so much in the ocean space, that we have a monumental task ahead in building our own national capacities and our own scientific capabilities. I'm using scientific in the broad way of social science and all aspects of knowledge about oceans, that we have a monumental task in building the knowledge base. And I take this opportunity to thank so many partnerships we have, including with the Sasakawa Peace Foundation and the support it is providing. IOC, UNESCO is working very closely with us. I take this opportunity to also tell you about an exciting new initiative we are launching with the government of Norway, which is providing financing for 25 PhD scholarships in the ocean space over the next 4-year period with the University of the South Pacific for the whole of the Pacific. And 25 will give us 25 solid PhDs by Pacific Islanders from Palau, Marshall Islands, Cook Islands, Samoa, Fiji, Solomon Islands. The whole of this region will perhaps give us a small critical mass of deep thinkers who can begin to marry the knowledge of oceans. They need to marry our traditional science, our own understanding by our elders, by our communities of deep science, of oceanography, of as we map the oceans and we learn more about it, of the economics of the oceans and how that helps us shape our thinking about sustainable oceans, about what more we are learning about marine genetics, for example, and how important that will be, and that this will give us, Norway and Pacific Partnership will give us the critical mass where we are joining the pieces of knowledge. And I really hope that Sasakawa Foundation and IOC UNESCO can be part of this effort, that we are bringing all the pieces together so we can make better judgments about how we take sustainable blue economy forward. And there's so much we stand to lose. It's no point, I know you are all the converted I'm talking to, and so no point repeating the usual. We stand to lose it all if we miss 1.5. That's why we are here. That's why we are fundamentally here. Everything else is a sideshow. Lose 1.5, I do not know what we are talking about here. That we need to hold on to. If we are not making commitments that take us to 1.5, we are in the wrong place. We are not with where the rest of the planet is, and we are not where the citizens of the world want us to be. We need to be there. So that's one very important starting point. But think also, and thank you for this event this morning after a very extensive day of oceans, think what we stand to lose. And I can tell you, of the 20 new products that have most cancer-fighting type of capabilities, they are based on marine genetics. They are oceans-based. Those ones which are in the advanced stages of trialing and testing in the great labs of the world, they are oceans-based. And I'll tell you one thing more, that 80% of them are from the blue Pacific region. So if you warm this ocean up, and you pump it with all the plastic in the world, we are scoring such a huge own goal that when perhaps the next pandemic will come, we would have destroyed the base that will provide us the medicines for that. So it is such an own goal we are scoring against ourselves and against our children by maintaining on this, by continuing to be on this pathway. So I really want to congratulate you for a fantastic event this morning again, and wish you a great collaboration, and look forward to an exciting event. And please take it from us. Fiji is one of the firmest supporters of the Decade of Ocean Science, and whole of the Pacific. If I cannot speak on behalf of whole of the Pacific, but you'll find all of the Pacific countries fully supportive of the Decade, and you'll only find willing hands in any way we can support and encourage greater success for this great initiative. So I thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for the powerful speech. Thank you very much. And next, We are absolutely delighted to have our next keynote address from Dr. Margaret Reinen, Director of Scripps Institute of Oceanography and Vice Chancellor for Marine Science of University of California at San Diego. Dr. Reinen, floor is yours here.
Thank you, Sonoda-san. I have the pleasure of telling you a little bit about how specifically the decade is going to address the problems of climate. The decade has taken on an incredible role in activating science and the science community to address the issues of climate, the impacts of climate change, the ways to mitigate climate change, and those tools for us to adapt to climate change. And secondly, specifically for this session, Asia and the Pacific have taken a leadership role in the UN decade in making that happen. So let's talk just about a few of those ideas. You know, Ambassador Prasad talked about the history of oceans becoming part of the UN decade, or the UNFCCC process. At Paris, there was that one word in the preamble, including the ocean for the first time. In Madrid, we heard the report, the special report on oceans and cryosphere, and it was as though the COP process finally said, oh, we get it. The oceans are important, and now we are really seeing that happen. And just in time for that, we have the decade, which is calling together the entire ocean science community to participate. And not only just calling them together, organizing them so that we can coalesce around a number of challenges and a number of goals that are really going to make this happen. So among those challenges are to expand the ocean observing system. And this is critically related to understanding the impacts of climate change and the causes of it. So CO2 and ocean acidification, warming and the increase in temperature of the ocean, combined the deoxygenation of the ocean, and other factors such as the role of the deep ocean, which we're just beginning to understand, both beyond the great overturning circulation of the ocean. The deep ocean has direct connections to the middle depths and the surface. And finally, the way that the multiple stressors come together to create and accelerate change in the ocean. And finally, biology. It's, you know, when I was a student, the physicists never talked about biology. It was as though it didn't occur. And now we know that, you know, even if you take a liter of seawater from 4,000 meters depth and look at it, it's like minestrone soup. It's full of organisms, and they are affecting the turbulence, they're affecting the wave propagation, they're affecting the chemistry, and all of that is also related to climate. So a second major goal has been to unlock ocean-based solutions. Coastal habitats, for example, take up 2 to 4 times the carbon of terrestrial habitats. And so we're looking at ways to activate those, whether it's mangroves or seagrass or kelp or other techniques to allow the ocean to achieve its full potential to take up carbon. Third, coastal resilience. On the adaptation side, we're seeing more and more impacts from sea level rise related to the warming of the ocean, from the increase in the extreme weather events beyond sea level rise that are affecting our coastal and coastal environments, and then the hazard that's related to losing those biological environments, whether it's mangroves, seagrasses, etc. All of these are addressed by some or many of the Ocean Decade programs. So specifically, I brought this up to call your attention to these pages which say what is already happening during the Ocean Decade. And rather than me going through it, you'll see a whole host of Ocean Decade programs, interdisciplinary, multi-year, and multinational efforts that will take place over the next 10 years. And they actually ran out of space. There are more than this because they just looked at the ones that are directly relevant to climate, but also looking at the genetics that Ambassador Prasad highlighted, the biodiversity and those impacts. There are also programs and regional programs as well. And that brings me to the leadership role that Asia and the Pacific have played. One of the very first workshops to bring together the scientific community to identify the specific science challenges and the ways that we could address them took place in Tokyo. It was organized by Westpac and the Westpac nations. And it actually provided the model for how regional groups would come together to define these problems. And it identified so many of the activities and the challenges that are reflected now in the decade. And secondly, one of the second regional workshops was put on by the Pacific community. And it was so important because it was the first one of the regional workshops to really highlight not just the connection with social science and policy, but the importance of users of information, to really focus the attention of us, the scientists, on the information that's necessary for decision and action. And secondly, they emphasized the role of traditional knowledge of the ocean and how important that is for us to be able to reach back into times before CO2 began impacting the ocean so importantly, to have that baseline that extends beyond our lives and beyond the Industrial Revolution into the past. That's so critical, and it has really shaped so much of the thinking for the decade, and it actually resulted in the seventh goal of the decade, an inspiring ocean, one that is connected to us as people. So our Ocean Decade covers all of that. It has galvanized the community, it's brought us together, it has instigated a whole host of programs, and it has focused us not only on science, but science for sustainable development. Thank you.
Dr. Narunen, thank you very much for your insightful speech. And we'd like now to move to the panel session. May I ask all the panelists to come to the front, please? And may I also ask Alison Klassen, Deputy Coordinator of the Ocean Decade at the IOC, to proceed to the stage, please. I'd like to leave the microphone in her capable hands and ask her to moderate the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomohiko, and good morning to all of our live audience. Good morning, good afternoon to our virtual audience. It's a real thrill to be here today. Very, very inspirational opening speeches. So thank you very much to Ambassador Prasad and to Dr. Leinen and to the President of OPRI for your participation and your speeches this morning. We have a fabulous panel discussion, a truly hybrid discussion with two panelists here with us today and another two panelists who will be joining remotely. I'll just start with Dr. Mishida, who is here representing as well Japan's National Decade Committee. And Dr. Mishida, I hope you can hear us. We'd like to hear from you to start with about how the Japanese National Decade Committee is working and how you're operating and working to generate ocean knowledge for climate action in Japan and beyond. So Dr. Mishida, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Thank you, Alison. Good morning to all the on-site participants. And also I'd like to say hello to all the colleagues in Asia and the Pacific. Can I share my slide here? I hope you can take a look. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thank all the conveners for the invitation to me to join this important side event at the occasion of the COP26. It is my great honor to be here as one of the speakers and to have such opportunity to share with you on some views regarding UN Decade-Catalysing Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which has just started in January this year at the United Nations level. My short presentation here will be focusing upon Japan's contribution to the decade. The ocean, with no doubt, plays a key role in Earth's system, particularly with its function of controlling the climate through exchanging heat budget and the greenhouse gases between the ocean and the atmosphere, as already emphasized by the previous speakers. Japan actually and continuously has been contributing to the preparation of the UN Decade Ocean Science since 2018. Japanese government offered an extra budgetary contribution to the IOC to accelerate the preparatory works and at its early stage of the planning of the decade. We also hosted a regional preparatory workshop in Tokyo in 2019. According to the recommendation of the implementation plan of the decade, in February this year, just 2 months passed from the official launching of the decade, Japan established the Japanese National Committee for the decade for better coordination of the variety of national activities related to and contributing to the decade implementation. With regard to the regional workshop held in 2019, Dr. Margaret Lanning had already mentioned in her keynote speech, was held in 2019. It was organized jointly by IOC Westpac and the PICES, North Pacific Marine Science Organization, with financial support by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, so-called MEX in Japanese government. Over 150 experts, mainly from the region, participated in the workshop and had an intensive discussion about a wide range of issues, resulting in some essential outcomes on cross-cutting issues. These outcomes were reflected in the international discussion of the implementation plan through members of the executive planning group for the decade from the region. This kind of the workshop we had in Tokyo. This is the structure of Japanese National Committee for the UN Decade of Ocean Science. There are wide participation from related stakeholders, not only from research or science sectors, but also from related ministries and the industrial sectors as well. There is a member of the House of Councillors as an advisor, so that we'll be able to make it possible to convey our voices to the policy-making processes in more direct manners. The expected functions or the term of reference of the committee include to promote collaborative national initiatives across various stakeholders in well-coordinated or better coordinated ways, and to liaise with international and intergovernmental communities of the decade so that Japanese contributions can meet the requirements of the regional, interregional, and international perspectives. The membership consists of 20 experts so far, including two co-chairs, Dr. Tsunami, the president of Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and Dr. Tsukamoto, the president of Japan Society of Ocean Policy, and the oceanographers like me. It should be noted that 9 DG-level governmental officials also joined this committee. The committee meets regularly. Latest one was held latest one was the third session, which was held on October 5th. And we initiate activities such as operation of the website and publication to promote the decade. I'd like just to highlight the publication, Japan's initiative for Decade Ocean Science, just released June this year, which summarized ongoing national activities which would contribute to the decade. In response to the first call of the action, some proposals were submitted from Japan's web. 3 of them have been endorsed as decade projects. But at the same time, some more initiatives among the activities summarized in this publication will also be submitted to respond to the second call, I suppose. Just to make an announcement for the region, from the region, a UN Decade Kickoff Conference will be held on November 25th and the 6th, hosted by the government of Thailand in close collaboration with IOC's SPAC and many countries in the region. High-level segment will be held in the afternoon of November 25th, and a series of the incubator sessions will also be organized. Okay. Finally, Ms. Chairperson, to know the ocean processes, including the ecosystem, is certainly to understand the global climate system. The UN Decade Ocean Science for Sustainable Development will certainly provide huge contributions to the discussion of global climate change. Along this line, Japan will continuously promote the decade-related activities in closer collaboration with wider international communities. So to conclude my talk, I just look forward to further and closer collaboration in promoting the decade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mishida, for that overview. And congratulations to you and all your colleagues for the work of the Japanese National Decade Committee. I think, we now have 24 National Decade Committees that have been established, many others that are coming online in the next few months. And they're very, very important mechanisms for being able to take that global ambition of the decade and translate it to the national level. So we really encourage the work of the Japanese National Decade Committee. Certainly on the Ocean Decade website, you can find out more about what the National Decade Committees are doing and find out ways to contact them if you're more interested in learning more. So now let's have a bit conversation with our in-person panelists, and starting perhaps with you, Steve. As I mentioned, you focus on ocean acidification. You're one of the co-leads of the OARS program, the Ocean Acidification Research for Sustainability, which is one of the 31 endorsed Ocean Decade programs that is currently operating. So perhaps you could start off by giving us just a broad overview of some of the key ocean knowledge gaps in the Asia-Pacific, perhaps, and then talk with a particular focus on ocean acidification and what you see as some of the things that we still need to learn and understand.
Okay, yep, that's on. Thank you very much for that question. I think in order to answer that, I'd like to take you back a little bit on a little bit of a journey where OARS came from. Back in 2012, can you hear? Is that better? Is that, yeah? Excellent. Okay. So for those who didn't hear, I'm taking you back a little bit on a bit of a journey to understand where OARS came from as a UN Decade Programme. Back in 2012, it was an emerging issue that ocean acidification was posing a considerable threat to the health and well-being of the oceans. Nearly 30% of the CO2 that we've released into the atmosphere has gone into our oceans, causing chemical changes a number of chemical changes which collectively we call ocean acidification. And it's clear that these have a very significant biological effect on the organisms around them. The scientific community came together in a meeting in Seattle and established that the way in which we were going to address this global phenomenon was with global coordination and global cooperation. So we created the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, and with support from IOC, UNESCO, and support from NOAA, and also from the International Atomic Agency, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Yeah, I always get that one wrong. Too many I's and too many A's. Who supported the Secretariat. We started the business of drawing together a global community so that we could agree on the key strategies, because it was clear that we needed to move quickly and effectively and efficiently. So we fast forward now to 2021, and now the network contains nearly 1,000 individual scientist members spread across 105 different countries. And we focus ourselves to answer three really big scientific questions. Firstly, what are the rates and what are the drivers of the ocean acidification processes that we're seeing, not only in the open ocean, but also in the coastal areas where humans and the ocean interact most closely? Secondly, what are the biological consequences to individual organisms and ecosystems for those chemical changes? Something which is going to take an awful lot of, it's a really big knowledge gap, not just globally, but particularly in the area that we're talking about, Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, where some of the most vulnerable and sensitive organisms and ecosystems to ocean acidification call home. And the third one is to be able to forecast and project into the future what these changes are going to look like, both in terms of the chemistry, but also the biological risk and the biological impact. So when the Ocean Decade came along, it prompted GOAN as a community of scientists to think, how are we going to step up to the challenge of the Ocean Decade? Because it required us to change the way in which we thought. Ocean scientists are brilliant at identifying a problem and a question and come up with some fantastic science to be able to explore it. What the Ocean Decade wants us to do is understand how we are going to drive real change, how we are going to make things better, which requires us to define the outcomes first and then decide on what the science is needed to support those outcomes. We've all got fantastic science questions to answer, but we really need to focus on those science questions that are going to deliver those outcomes. So what are those outcomes? We came up with 7 outcomes. The first one is about clearly defining the data and the evidence that we need for mitigation and adaptation strategies at local and global scales. So it's very difficult to design the science until we actually know what those science needs are. So that is very much a first step. Then we need a global observing community that is equipped to provide the high quantity, high quality, high resolution data around ocean acidification that we are going to need. And you'll notice I said a global observing community. I didn't say a global science community, because there is no way scientists are going to be able to deliver the amount of information that is required to answer these challenges. We need to reach out into other sectors, other stakeholders who are going to be able to support us in the collection of this evidence and this data. The third one is about establishing long-term, well-funded, I wouldn't be a scientist if I didn't mention the money, well-funded ocean observing systems that are co-designed and co-implemented between scientists, the funders themselves, and the stakeholders and the end users of those data, so that we can rely on the data that is being generated to answer the questions we need. And those are the 3 impacts that, the outcomes that ours is starting with. You know, we've got a 10-year program, but we need to do some things more quickly than others. So those are the first 3. But that doesn't detract from some of the other really key ones. Knowledge of risks and severity of ocean acidification on the biology. As you were saying, biology is key. It's a consequence, the so what question. the projections we make, the models we run need to be societally relevant. We need to be there, and they need to be freely available to the people that need to use them to make the decisions. We need to ensure that ocean acidification as an issue obtains greater literacy across the whole of society. So when I go to talk to people, I don't need to explain what ocean acidification is. And last but not least, the key thing is that the ocean acidification evidence and knowledge that OARS generates has to be included in international and national legislation and policy. There is no point us collecting this information if nobody uses it. Now, clearly that's going to require us to make strong partnerships outside of the scientific community, and part of my role in events such as this is to try to a call to arms to come and join us and to help us to deliver against those outcomes. We really want to hear from you. We really want your partnerships. I know I haven't quite answered your question in terms of the local focus, so I just want to do a couple of adverts which show what OARS is doing now on the ground in the particular areas of interest. GOAN organises itself into regional hubs because we understand that ocean acidification, although it's a global phenomenon, it has local effects. Two of our key hubs are located IOC Westpac in the Southeast Asia, but also in PI TOA, which is in the Pacific Islands. And both of these hubs have been incredibly active around training and also in capacity building. So that talks to one of our first outcomes, which is about creating that community that can observe. For example, launching very soon will be the Pacific Regional Ocean Acidification Training Hub in Fiji. And the goal of that is to support and train researchers who are monitoring OA and other variables. And that's being delivered in partnership between the Pacific Community Centre for Ocean Science, the University of the South Pacific, and colleagues in NIWA in New Zealand and the University of Otago. And we're grateful to funding from the Ocean Foundation, from NOAA's Ocean Acidification Programme, and also the US Department of State. That will be coupled with a free online course, Ocean Acidification in the Pacific Islands, and dates will be coming out for that in early 2020. Westpac, we've already seen an advertisement for the upcoming Ocean Decade programme, and I would urge people to join that meeting because there will be satellite events associated with the Ocean Decade actions. And as a programme, OARS is looking to bring in actions that will help support us deliver our outcomes. So I hope that gives you a flavour of what OARS is trying to do globally, but also within the specific region.
It does, and thank you very much for that, Stephen. I think that deserves a round of applause, indeed. And I think it's great, some of the key words there about the co-design, the sustainability, and I think this is why OARS is such an important part of that first group of flagship programs for the decade, because it is looking way past the science, and as you say, bringing in the other sectors, bringing in the other actors, looking at the capacity development aspects of science and how it is going to be used for sustainable development. So congratulations again to you and the team for an amazing program. We look forward to working with you closely over the next 10 years and for you to show the example to other programs and other groups who are thinking of becoming part of the Ocean Decade through future calls for decade actions as well. I think while I've got the live panelists on the stage, I might actually go to Venka for a couple of questions now. I know we did have another online participant, but I'm going to profit from Venka being on the stage with us here. So Venka, you're representing the private sector, the industry point of view, both from CERMAC, but also as the special advisor to UN Global Compact. So could you talk to us a little bit about why is the private sector here at COP26? What is the climate challenge for the private sector? And how can the Ocean Decade help to meet that challenge for the private sector?
majority of the CEOs, we had over 1,200 across 120 countries, 21 industries, and they're seeing supply chain disruptions caused by extreme weather events, and they're seeing that climate change is really high climbing at the top of the agenda for this country in this month. So it's really here now, and this is really now. So the climate sector challenge, one side is the resilience side, how do you adapt? And the other side is also how can you not be a part of it. So we're working a lot now across the industries, personally and others, from the key components on setting climate targets. And this is something that is really accelerating. We're seeing that investors have a big appetite for climate targets for companies, and we're seeing now an acceleration of pathway on setting science-based climate targets across industries, and this is very positive. But of course the challenge is what is the set of targets? Is this better? Oh.
So companies are setting science-based climate targets, which is a very important first step to both work on the mitigation side, but also on the adaptation side. So the challenge is, of course, how can you decarbonize your value chain? Everyone can do what they can do on scope 1 and 2, which is in your own operations as a company. But the big elephant in the room is scope 3 emissions, value chain emissions. And to really address that part, which is typically 70 to 90% of total emissions for a company, you need to collaborate. And you need to work with science, with policymakers, civil society to really develop these solutions so that you're also making sure that you're working on a broader set of sustainability challenges as well, not creating new challenges as you're trying to solve one. The social dimension being important there, of course. So I think science is, of course, our common ground for action, and we need companies to inform their decisions on science, and we need science-based regulations. So we can hope for good action and good decisions here at COP26. But one thing that is clear is that companies are not waiting for policy action. They are acting now, setting climate targets. And then, of course, the big challenge now and the big opportunity is how can we decarbonize sectors and how can we work with science to make this happen faster and scale it in the coming decade.
The Ocean Decade can hopefully provide a framework for that as well, because it's very much about bringing diverse actors together in this process of co-design and co-delivery that Stephen and Dr. Mashida mentioned as well. You know, we cannot achieve the ambition of the decade without private sector and without industry, and understanding what your priorities are and then helping to generate the science and the knowledge you need. So building then on from that, UN Global Compact. I mean, they've been a fantastic partner of IOC, of the decade. You are one of their special advisors. Could you talk a little bit about what UN Global Compact is doing, will do through the Ocean Decade, and how that can also be a convening force for industry and private sector?
Certainly, yes. So the UN Global Compact is working to connect the private sector with the Ocean Decade and develop science-based solutions. As I mentioned, science-based targets as one example. Towards COP26, we had a very good collaboration on marine spatial planning, which is, of course, central for the ocean industries to really deliver on climate, the climate challenge as well. To quote John Kerry, ocean action is climate action, and that's really what we're aiming to work on as well. We want to develop solutions, and from a scientific starting point. Also, I think what the Global Compact can assist with in terms of bridging private sector and the scientific community is to bring more initiatives onto the stage. One example is the partnership we're having with CBOS, which is a seafood industry initiative, Seafood Business for Ocean Stewardship, which is 10 of the world's largest seafood companies. 6 of 10 of those are based in Asia, working to set climate targets and working across 10 sustainability commitments to really create transformational change for a healthy ocean, and particularly working on SDG 14, life below water. So never forgetting the biodiversity aspect and ocean health. And I think in that collaboration, there might be some experience to bring on when working with the Ocean Decade going forward as well. This collaboration is anchored in science. It was started by Stockholm University scientists in 2016. So there's some excellent research papers out there explaining the science behind CBOS and why we're working on those 10 commitments particularly, and why we have those 10 companies in the room. But I think that there may be 5 success factors for a good science industry collaboration. Keeping in mind this is absolutely in progress. We have not reached our goals yet. But from CBOS, we see that starting from a science base, a collaborative approach is obviously a key ingredient. Accountable members, accountable companies, looking at their operations, implementing the change needed in their companies, doing that first, and also working on the transformational change to share that knowledge outside of their organizations, so that we can have industry change outside of that collaboration. I think, like what you mentioned, we have to really prioritize key issues. You have to know which areas to work on. That's absolutely critical to advance. And finally, develop market solutions. That's so important for the private sector to deliver. And here I think the science industry collaboration is really key as well to really inform business decisions, make sure that we start from a common ground of facts so that we can deliver on the same set of goals, which is the SDGs really.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think that's right. I think there's certainly, we hear again collaboration and breaking down some of those language barriers, almost those communication barriers between the scientists and industries, and it's initiatives like these ones that are again going to show the way and lead by example. And of course you mentioned talking about fisheries and sustainable seafood. One of the Ocean Decade challenges is very focused around this question of how are we going to feed a growing world population sustainably as we're looking for alternatives to land-based protein. So we have some projects that are starting to come through, some program ideas that are starting to come through. So we'd love to keep in touch on these initiatives as they come forward and see how we can integrate and further collaborate.
Glad to hear that.
So thank you very much. So now we're going to turn back to one of our final virtual panelists, yes, Dr. Nada Oka, who is from the Tokyo Institute of Technology, who is a coastal ecosystem management specialist. And thank you very, very much for being with us today. We're going to focus a little bit, we've talked about industry, we've talked about ocean acidification, sustainable development, and we're going to move to coral reefs now. So we'd like to ask you if you could talk a little bit about the situation for coral reefs in the Asia Pacific today. What are some of the key knowledge gaps, some of the solutions that we should be looking for, and what are some of the links to sustainable development that we could achieve through the Ocean Decade? So over to you. Thank you very much.
I'm a little bit confused because my presentation title is not about corals. Instead, my talk is about the blue carbon ecosystem conservation. Okay,
well, apologies for that miscommunication, that misunderstanding. But please go ahead with the presentation that you have prepared, and I think it'll be an extremely interesting contribution to the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Oh, what there? Whoa. My presentation file is gone.
The challenge.
I don't know what's up.
We'll get there.
I don't know.
In the meantime, we're admiring your lovely background. There we go. I think it's.
Whoa.
It's come up now. We can see it. Oh.
Okay.
See it?
Can you see this one?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay. Let me begin. Okay, in my presentation today, I'd like to briefly introduce our ongoing project entitled Comprehensive Assessment and Conservation of Blue Carbon Ecosystems and Their Services in the Coral Triangle, Blue Cares Project. The Blue Cares Project is aiming at establishing blue carbon strategy as an effective scheme for enhancing local efforts to conserve coastal ecosystem and improve its resilience, and thereby for contributing to mitigation of global warming. It is a trilateral joint project between Japan, Philippines, and Indonesia for 6 years until March 2023 under the SATRAPS program by JST and JICA. The project team consists of a wide variety of research groups, having close collaborations with various stakeholders for transdisciplinary approaches. The target area of the project is Coral Triangle. It has quite outstanding features, having the world's highest richness and diversity of the coastal blue carbon ecosystems consisting of mangroves, seagrasses, and others. But unfortunately, the area has been indicating the highest rates of loss of these ecosystems due to various anthropogenic impacts and climate changes. This slide shows oceanic CO2 synthesis characteristics of the regions. The left figure is an example of a global map of a CO2 flux at a sea surface. As you can see, most of the region is indicated white, meaning that the CO2 flux that are in the region is quite limited. Therefore, we have tried to fill this information gap by using a newly developed model. The right panel shows the simulated overall flux distribution for the last decade, indicating that the ocean of the Coral Triangle and its surroundings acted as source areas of the CO2. Therefore, we have to put big efforts for blue carbon ecosystem conservation and restoration to compensate CO2 emission nature of the ocean in the region. First, we need to check recent status of the blue carbon ecosystem in the region. For example, this slide shows the results of the nationwide mapping of the mangrove forest extent in the Philippines using a newly developed mangrove extent remote sensing method for detecting its decadal changes. We found that the mangrove forests have still been decreasing. Although massive mangrove forest conservation to fish ponds had been finished by 2000 in the Philippines, the mangrove extent is still decreasing, mainly due to global warming-related factors like the exposure to extreme rainfall and typhoons. The massive mangrove extent loss would be more pronounced in the near future due to further increasing trends of these factors under global warming. Therefore, the key critical questions for us are how to combat these increasing threats and how to realize resilient blue carbon ecosystems in close linkages with socioeconomic factors. In our project, we have various subjects as challenges for effectively conserving and restoring these ecosystems. like combined natural regeneration and plantation method, abundant fish and shrimp ponds, rehabilitation and restoration based on, for example, bay-scale silver fishery. Integrated green and blue carbon ecosystem conservation planning as GB-Link approach, and enhancement of local community engagement with a citizen science approach, capacity development, and others. And policy decision support system development with integrated model system, core and networks system, CNS, and others. For example, we have been developing an integrated large-scale model system consisting of the various local scale blue carbon dynamics model, terrestrial green carbon dynamics model, and NES's 3D ocean circulation model. The model system will be used as a tool for analyzing these ecosystem dynamics and for scenario analysis to find effective policies in a perspective of local, regional, global scale linkages. Another unique challenge in the project is the development of core and network systems, CNS, for periodical nationwide monitoring and linking various local actions and national policy planning. This figure shows the structure of the CNS Philippines with 3 clusters. We are developing CNS Indonesia as well. And we have a vision toward a near future to establish a regional scale CNS to cover the Coral Triangle and its surrounding areas as a key platform of intermediate scale for bridging local national efforts and global initiatives. This is the last slide indicating my message. Integration, linkages, and networking, all those are keys to realize effective initiatives, policies, and actions for BC ecosystem conservation and restoration, and thereby for contributing to climate change mitigation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Nadioka, and I'm actually glad that that you presented on this and not on the questions I asked you, because I think this was a much more interesting presentation. They gave us a fabulous overview of an initiative that touches on so many of the aspects that the Ocean Decade is trying to look at. So links between the land-sea interface, the monitoring, the local to national scale actions, and also touches on the question of ecosystem restoration. So in parallel with the Ocean Decade, there is a decade of ecosystem restoration, a UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. There are obviously strong links between ocean science, ecosystem restoration, and I think this is as an example of how those two initiatives could work together to really come to have climate mitigation as well as resilience benefits. So thank you very, very much for the informative presentation on the Blue Paris program. So just doing a quick time check, I think we've got time for just a couple of questions before we hand over to our closing speaker. I'm not rudely checking my phone. I am going onto the Slido platform to see if we have some questions that have come up, and maybe I can ask Venka and Stephen to join me up here again. And we also have our two online presenters that are still there as well. So I think the first question came through for you, Stephen, was if you could expand a little bit more on the overall capacity development approach of the OARS program. You mentioned a couple of initiatives that are going to be undertaken, but what else do you anticipate doing in terms of capacity development, and particularly focusing on least developed countries, small island developing states, where that capacity is most needed?
Certainly. We have a number of mechanisms. Yep, okay, fantastic. Okay, so we have a number of mechanisms that we've been using through GOAN and we want to take forward into OARS. One of those is a scheme called peer-to-peer, which is about coupling up researchers and students to try and develop the skills and the technology and the techniques needed to be able to contribute to the OARs and the GOAN objectives. What we endeavour to do is put together people who can work with each other. It's not a scheme whereby you just get assigned somebody to be a mentor. It's very much a scheme whereby we put people together to deliver a specific outcome or product that they want to develop. So finding the person with the right set of skills that can help the other person at the right period of time. And also, often it's a case of people often consider these mentoring schemes as putting a senior academic with somebody more junior, and that's not always the case. From our perspective, we have a fantastic community of young postdoctoral researchers who are really at the cutting edge of ocean acidification research, and actually they are fantastic mentors for groups or universities who are trying to get into ocean acidification from the start. So we're moving away from the concept of a senior mentor with a more junior mentee to be really focused on skill provision wherever that may happen. So that's our view for peer-to-peer. Large online training courses as well are something that we're looking to develop, and I know there's one, the IOC UNESCO are developing one at the moment, so give that one a bit of a plug. But equally, whilst I'm a big advocate of the online training, I think they do need to be complemented with some in-person training as well, particularly in the field of ocean acidification observations, because of the hands-on skills of being able to do that. The third tenet is about making ocean acidification observations easier to do. And that's about developing technologies, tools, and techniques so that we can put the power of observations into the hand of many more people. So we want to democratize the whole process of collecting ocean acidification data, because our aim is really to be having all nations being able to report effectively on their SDG 14.3 goal of marine acidity, but not only, and by reporting effectively, I mean not just providing a single measure of what their average marine acidity is in their national waters, because we've seen, particularly in Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, the heterogeneity and complexity of the system means that a single measure won't cut it. We need to make sure we understand what the breadth and the variability and the diversity of ocean acidification trends and impacts and sort of trends and impacts are going to be in those different habitats.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive answer, and great to hear all those different initiatives. The next question has come through for Dr. Mashida, if you can hear us, and the question is about how or are the different national decade committees in the region talking to each other and collaborating? Is there scope for the Japanese National Decade Committee to perhaps help smaller countries develop their own national decade committees and learn by experience?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, certainly we are trying to communicate with the other national committees in the region, but unfortunately not yet, I should say. But within the community of the Westpac, it's very good the platform to do so. So we now try to start the conversation with the member states in the Westpac region regarding the how to collaborate closer among the national committee for the decade in the region. So to answer the question directly, not yet, but in the future, we are sure to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And obviously that the Westpac region that Dr. Mashida mentioned will be an important opportunity for regional parties and national parties to come together. Venka, next question for you. You talked a lot about decarbonising the value chain, and we're we talked about collaboration with the scientific community and so forth. But how do you convince other players in that value chain within industry, whether they be suppliers or smaller partners, that they need to play their part, that everybody in that value chain has a role to play in the decarbonisation?
That's an excellent question, and I think it's becoming increasingly clear for all parts of the value chain that you have to do your part, because it's expected, customers expect it, the public expects it. This is really important for your reputation as well. And we see that, again, investors are really pushing for this to happen. And that's not only on one side of one part of the value chain, this really has to cascade through. So we see there is really a big focus now on how can we collaborate, how can we do this well, how can we set up partnerships through the value chain so that we can all deliver on the climate targets that we're setting. So I think we'll see even more of these collaborations happening going forward, because it's really not a question of do we want to do it, we have to do this, and how can we do this in a good way.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And a final question, at least virtually, and then if there are any questions from the live audience for Dr. Nadaoka. It's about blue carbon financing. So you talked a lot about the work that you're doing with the Blue Caris program and initiative. But can you talk a little bit about the potential to link that to blue carbon financing through carbon markets or other mechanisms?
Yeah, I'm not so much familiar with the details about that kind of topics, but one of the important points for our project is to provide a good scientific knowledge for making certain aspects of the blue carbon ecosystem that is a highly dynamic. Therefore, there are a lot of the uncertainties. Unless minimizing such uncertainty, you cannot properly evaluate, assess your potential efforts to properly value your efforts in such a market. And that is one of the important motivation for our project.
Fantastic. No, I think that's a really, really valid point. Before we can even talk about the market mechanisms, the financing links, we have to have the science right, and we have to be able to measure and evaluate the blue carbon. So thank you very much. A final look around the room to see if there are any questions from our live audience. We're coming close to time. Yes, please. While anybody thinks of a final question, Steve, please go ahead.
Okay, so it was going to be a short intervention, but it's a bit longer. So from a personal point of view, what is it the Ocean Decade has made me do differently? And it's challenged me as a scientist to think differently. It was all too easy for me to think about how I was going to cure the problem with the data I collected and the science question that I answered. It's made me think about how more than science knowledge can help me get to where I want to get to. And it's challenged me to think about how do I embrace other streams of knowledge to make the science I do better. And I think if the Ocean Decade is going to do anything, it's going to challenge all of the players involved to move outside the area they feel comfortable, and we're going to have to start thinking really differently to the way we have done traditionally. So I think if the Ocean Decade achieves anything, it's about making us think very differently about how we do things.
Wow. That's a great final and inspiring comment, and I think from the Ocean Decade team we're thrilled to hear that, because that's something, if we can propagate that thinking and getting people moving outside their their silos and their comfort zones, then as you say, we've achieved a lot, and we've contributed to the sustainable development goal of the decade. So on that note, a huge thank you to our 4 panelists for your amazing contributions. That was an extremely interesting discussion, and I will pass the floor back over to Tomihiko. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for fruitful discussion for the panel session. Please give a warm round deserving applause to our panelists and moderator. Last but not least, before we depart today, I'd like to conclude with a very special message from Dr. Vladimir Ravenin, Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, IOC of UNESCO, and Assistant Director General of UNESCO.
Thank you very much, Tsunoda-san. So, I have 2 roles here. I think I have, first of all, to, like it is customary, to conclude with thanks. And on behalf of IOC, I would really like to thank our dear partners, Ocean Policy Research Institute, Japan, for this organization. And I would like also to say and to show to you, of course, apart from the brochure that you already know, what Michida-san, or for me, his dear Yutaka, said, it is actually happening. And already this publication on what Japan is doing in the decade is already out of print. So I have a copy of that. And on top of that, I would like also to say that Japan has recently translated the implementation plan of the decade into Japanese. So I think it will be really an enabling mechanism for that. I would like really to thank also the director of the OPRI, Sakaguchi-san, for very thoughtful speech. And I would like also to say that, after that, the level was not really it was really excellent, But I think my role is now to summarize what is happening. And I have to say I decline, because I cannot do it better than speakers. And what was important for me was not only the intellectual depth of that discussion, it was also the emotion. I think this is what is really changing now. Because, I used to be also kind of a scientist, and I felt that the science is really important, and simply people don't understand why it is important. So I will continue. No, it's changing now. I think we are creating a new environment. In that particular case, I think I would like to mention, and I thank Margaret, and I thank His Excellency Satyendra Prasad for your vision, and these visions are coming together now. It is very important. What actually Steve said is also was very canonical about the challenge, about getting out of this ivory castle. So now let me just elaborate on this a little bit. So, and I think about this session, we had a view of the global picture. We had a view how this picture affects what is happening around us. The most important challenge of the world, to go to 1.5, how we can contribute. And now let me present to you a difference between the environment around us. So there is a convention, heads of state are coming, everyone is struggling to get the commitments to do what is necessary. It is really difficult. And we don't have any convention on science. We have a convention of law of the sea that's basically like code of the route, but there is no convention on science. So we have to organize ourselves. And it's actually happening, and this is absolutely wonderful. Because this, we are bringing together intellectual, kind, honest people to create a movement. And that is exactly what Decade is doing, the movement, the framework. So, and I think because of that, in the Decade, in the 31 programs of the Decade already we endorsed. Also, there are 6 actions. There are dozens and dozens of projects. This is not that science that we are used to have only. The science that is, I would say, measuring something in the ocean only, or, modeling or engineering work. This is also very much social science. I'm particularly impressed with such There's many programs, but such programs like the Decade of Ocean Empathy, like Leadership of Women in Ocean Decade, Early Career Ocean Professionals, Underwater Cultural Heritage. I would like also to say that, this region, the Pacific, is the first region that actually started a regional program of the decade that was endorsed. So, and then once again, please remember there will be a regional conference organized in cooperation with the Thai government, 25th, 26th of November. Please participate. And this is a chance. This is a chance to develop a regional vision. So let me now move to I forgot what I wrote already, so I need to look at this. So yeah, the process of the decade. So, I say it's already a framework. So what we do, we issue a call, we get input, we analyze the input, we help people to come together, and out of 200 proposals, we now have 30 programs that are consolidated, that are co-designing the science. This is where we are now. Now there is a second call. Priorities are ocean, clean ocean, healthy ocean, ocean ecosystems, ocean climate nexus, so relevant for this environment around. Then there will be an addition to what we do. We will again reanalyze where we are moving forward, where we are not moving forward, and then we issue the next call. The next call will be also filling the gaps. If we would like to create a value chain from observations, research to policy to actions. Actions have to be regional. And that's exactly what is needed for this region, the Pacific. So my personal analysis of what is happening in the Pacific, also with the help of Westpac, very strong development of science, very strong focus on biogeochemical, ecological science that is really helping such works like, for example, for the ocean acidification. There are seeds of growth in the work on management of the ocean in the region, and this is where the thing can go further. In that region, and around Pacific, we have the following members of the high-level panel: Fiji, Japan, USA, Australia, USA now, it's already there, Palau, Indonesia, Mexico, Chile. So, I think around the region there is big movement of managing the ocean, so it's possible. So let's just try to make it, and with the help of BBNJ regime and also contribution to climate. So if we develop with the help of the conference the new vision of how we can manage the ocean, the region on the basis of ocean decade, I think we will achieve the goal. And that's exactly what Steve was saying. We set the target, and then we move forward with the science. With that, I would like to thank you. And once again, I think it was a good meeting that covered in like a wide spectrum of many important things. But it's important that what you take out of this meeting. Thank you.
And this concludes today's event, the Ocean Decade Catalysing Climate Action in Asia and Pacific. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone once more for attending for our event and for your part in making change happen. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you very much.